Caught my wife in the car with another man. What I did next will shock you. It was one of those July mornings when the sun decides to have a little chat with the earth. The kind of morning that feels more like midday than the start of a day. The air is heavy, thick and slow. Even the shadows seem to drag themselves along the pavement. It was one of those days when even a dog would seek shade before noon. And there I was standing by the window, my face almost touching the cool glass. My eyes were fixed on our car, my wife's car, the car we paid for together, the car that was supposed to be ours, the car that now housed two people who belonged to each other. The sight before me was like a scene from a cheap motel movie, except this was my life and it was anything but cheap. The sight before me was my wife, my beautiful angelic wife, and the man who was slowly eating away at our marriage, the man who had been systematically dismantling my family. If looks could kill, I would have killed him many times over. But he didn't care. He was too busy being a complete douchebag. He was leaning against our car, casually smoking my wife's favorite lavender-scented cigarette. I could see her in the driver's seat, her head resting on his shoulder. They were both laughing, their voices a nauseating symphony of deceit and betrayal. For a moment I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. It was as if someone had pressed the pause button on my life. I felt like I was in a bubble, cut off from the world, suspended in a state of shock. Then something inside of me snapped. It was a primal, ancient instinct, the instinct of a man who had been wronged, a man who had been betrayed, a man who had been stripped of his dignity. I wanted to scream, to let out a roar that would shake the foundations of their fake world, but I didn't. Instead, I did something much worse. I walked away. I walked away from the window, from the couple in the car, from the life that was crumbling before my eyes. I walked away because that's what they wanted. They wanted me to make a scene, to confront them, to beg for forgiveness. They wanted a reaction, and I wasn't going to give it to them. I walked away because I had to, because I owed it to myself, to my family, to my dignity. I walked away because I knew that any explosion of anger, any outburst of emotion would only play into their hands. So I walked away and I planned. I planned how I was going to take back control of my life, of my family, of my world. I planned how I was going to make them pay for what they had done. I planned how I was going to make them fear. When I turned back, my face was expressionless, my eyes cold and hard. When I spoke, my voice was flat and emotionless. I greeted them with a smile, a polite and friendly smile. I asked about their day, about their plans, about their lives. I was the perfect husband, the model of composure and grace. I was everything they thought I was, and that was the worst thing I could have done. They crumbled under my facade. They saw the pain in my eyes, the hurt in my voice, the emptiness in my smile. They felt the weight of their guilt, the burden of their betrayal. They tried to apologize, to explain, to make amends. But I stopped them. I told them not to bother, that everything was fine, that there was no need for apologies or explanations. I told them that I understood, that I forgave them, that I wanted them to be happy. And that was the second worst thing I could have done. I knew I was hurting, that I needed time to process what had happened, to come to terms with the betrayal. But I didn't allow myself that luxury. I pushed my feelings down, buried them deep inside me, pretended that everything was okay. I was afraid that if I showed any sign of weakness, if I let them see the pain I was in, they would feel vindicated, that they had won. And they had indeed won. I let them think that I was strong, that I could handle the situation, that I was the bigger person. I let them think that they had gotten away with it, that they had won. But I knew the truth. I knew that nothing was okay, that nothing was fine, that I wasn't strong, that I was broken. The days that followed were a blur. I went through the motions of my life, talked to people, laughed at jokes, played my part. But my mind was elsewhere. I was replaying every moment of that day in my head, trying to figure out how things got so bad, trying to find a way to fix it. I was lost in a labyrinth of thoughts, feelings, and memories. One evening I found myself alone in the house. the silence deafening, the emptiness overwhelming. I couldn't take it anymore. I needed to talk to someone, to let go of some of the pain inside me. So I picked up my phone and I called my friend. I told him what had happened, how I had found out, how I had reacted. I could hear the shock, the disbelief, the sympathy in his voice. He told me to get my act together, to stand up for myself, to fight for my marriage. But I knew that was easier said than done. My marriage was a ship that had sprung a leak, and I was just trying to keep it afloat. But I didn't want to do that. I wanted to rebuild, to create something new, something better, something real. And I knew that the only way to do that was to let go of the past. I needed to forgive, not for their sake, but for mine. I was tired of carrying the weight of anger, of resentment, of bitterness. It was time to set myself free. So I did something radical. I went to see a therapist. I know it might sound cliché, but it was the best thing I could have done. Talking to someone, sharing my story, my feelings, my thoughts, my pain. It was like a balm to my soul. It was like a light in the darkness, a beacon of hope in the despair. I learned that I wasn't alone, that I wasn't weak, that I wasn't crazy. I learned that I was human, that I was allowed to feel, to cry, to be vulnerable. I learned that I was strong enough to move on, to heal, to grow. Months passed and I started to feel like myself again. I was still sad, still hurt, still angry, but I was also hopeful, I was also healing, I was also growing, I was also stronger, I was also wiser, I was also more compassionate, and I realized that what had happened to me, what they had done to me, it wasn't the worst thing that could have happened. In fact, it was the best thing that could have happened to me. I know it sounds strange, maybe even crazy, but it's true. I wouldn't trade what happened to me for the world. Why? Because it made me realize what I really wanted, what I really needed, what I really valued. It made me realize that I didn't want to live a life of lies, deceit, and betrayal. I wanted to live a life of truth, honesty, and authenticity. It made me realize that I didn't want to be with someone who didn't love me, respect me, or cherish me. I wanted to be with someone who did love me, respect me, and cherish me. It made me realize that I didn't want to stay in a marriage that was dead, suffocating, and empty. I wanted to find a new one that was alive, vibrant, and fulfilling. And that's why I'm here today, single, free, and ready to start a new chapter in my life. And I know it might seem like I'm running away from my problems, from my past, from myself, but I'm not. I'm facing them. I'm embracing them. I'm learning from them. I'm growing with them. I'm evolving through them. And I know that what happened to me, what they did to me, it wasn't the end of my story. It was just the beginning of a new one, a better one, a truer one, a more authentic one, a more loving one.